Greetings, this is Lansing LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. This is Lansing Online News Radio. And this is Bonnie Bucqueroux here at LCC Radio, soon to be joined by my friend Bill Castanier, who is dashing in from the other room.
Here's more noise.
Ah. So
good afternoon.
What is this going to mean, Bill? Are we still going to be back next week if the government shuts down?
Oh, gosh. That's a tough decision.
Anything that wouldn't affect us at all, would it? How will it affect you? Midnight tonight, it looks like federal funding disappears forever.
Does it include Social Security?
No, the checks still go.
Because they're electronic.
Well, it's also because it's the difference between mandatory and discretionary funding.
I can't think of any way right now that it affects me.
You don't need a passport?
No.
You're not headed to the Smithsonian?
No.
No?
No.
Well, you're in good shape then.
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Mm-hmm.
Other than the fact that it looks like
except maybe, how about air controllers? That is not.
They figured those had to stay.
Essential service.
Good move on their part.
But we do have somebody with us who probably will know if it's going to have any effect on our area. We are joined for our monthly visit by Eric Schertzing, who is the Ingham County Treasurer. Are we going to go down the dumpers if the federal government collapses tonight at midnight, if Ted Cruz wins?
Not real fast.
But we will, just more slowly.
No, it was funny. I was thinking about the juxtaposition of county government where, we wake up every morning, we show up, we do things that impact people's lives. And then there's that chatter in Washington that folks are just, what are they talking about?
Don't you like that kind of drama? Don't you have any kind of drama like that out in the county?
Do you know how wasteful it is? I was at a Capitol Area Community Services Board meeting today where we run the Head Start programs. And we had to, as a board, and the staff has had to engage in this, think about, we're going to test the electronic fund payment on Wednesday to see if something shuts down. And if
Head Start could go.
If we don't have money, we're going to have to figure out, well, what do we do? Because we don't have much to float them on.
No, I wouldn't think so.
Head Start doesn't float federal government. So it's just a waste of money.
Well, one of the things that concerns me too is, and the people that I'm supposedly training the next generation of in terms of journalists, it seems to me that they've been reporting this again as one of these sort of false equivalency stories. Well, gee, why doesn't President Obama meet them halfway, and why doesn't Congress meet them halfway? And it seems to me that this is really more of a shakedown than that. It's not, if somebody gets you in an alley and says, with the old protection racket, either you pay us off or your fruit stand might not be there tomorrow, that seems to be the kind of negotiations that are taking place right now. I would assume as a Democrat in good standing, you might agree with my analysis.
I am in good standing. If they got their way on this, what would they come after next? Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security?
That's what
they said the same things about that.
And this would only be for, what, a 2-month CR? Maybe 3 months? So we'd be back before Christmas with another one of these, and we have the debt ceiling in between, which is really dangerous.
Yeah, that's in 2 weeks, two or 3
Yeah.
weeks. So we're going to be right back at it no matter what happens.
That's a really dangerous one. The CR is one thing. You can limp along, and people will ultimately put pressure on to get back wages. It'll be a real disruption, and it'll be costly. But it's certainly nothing like the danger we face if all of a sudden the global people who hold our bonds get nervous that we're not going to pay them.
Yeah, the stock market only went down a little bit today. If they don't do the debt limit, it'll plunge.
Would we be looking at the kind of economic catastrophe that we did with Goldman Sachs? Some people have argued that. What would that do to our economic situation here if we went back into the kind of recession that we had before?
Pray that we're not that stupid.
Pray that we're not that stupid. It's down to that.
Well, we're going to see where the power base is in the country, if it's in Congress or if it's on Wall Street.
Well, Wall Street certainly doesn't want it.
They can't afford it.
No. The global economy would be in big trouble. So it's going to be very interesting to see what that means.
Yeah, when you get some phone calls from people that make $20 million a year, you'll probably take them.
I don't think Ted Cruz cares. I mean,
Good
you
point.
have a small group of
That's a good
ideals.
point.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, the more and more that Wall Street hates him, probably the more and more popular he is with the Tea Party, I would think. So, I mean, that argument may not fly there.
The sales of the Federalist Papers should be surging.
I actually had a student come up and talked to me about the Federalist Papers last week, and we were discussing whether.
Absolutely.
And he's a big fan of Alexander Hamilton because I happened to mention it. So well, the only one I didn't enjoy was Hamilton. And he said, "Oh, that's my favorite." So, indeed,
What kind of student was that knew about the Federalist Papers?
it's a student in my free speech class.
Interesting.
Yes.
Must have been James Madison.
Yeah,
He is James
yeah, I was going to say, they had
Were
to
you
be.
James
I was in James Madison.
You can tell.
I have a copy of the Federalist Papers next to my bed.
Do you really?
I do.
Wow. In place of Kleenex or?
Sex aid, the Federalist Papers. Are you kidding me?
There's no TV.
Oh, good.
Put you to sleep at night or?
No, I just love it. I mean, it's
See, I
it's
do
the
too.
essence of who we're supposed to be.
Yeah, it's government.
We've got to
I do love
refine
reading
it.
about that stuff. Yes, I must admit. Bill is a big fiction fan, and there are elements in there of fiction, but indeed, yes, I'm glad to hear another fan of the Federalist Paper. Are you a Hamilton fan?
Absolutely.
Oh, see, that's a little too economic for me. What's new in our county? What news did you bring us?
You know, all sorts of fascinating things constantly going on.
Yeah.
We are going to have an auction of some more tax foreclosed properties. Not a highlight, but we're all in this together and we form all sorts of partnerships. Two of the houses are a project that we've had with Preservation Lansing and the Michigan Historic Preservation Network. I did an open house on one this afternoon, another one tomorrow at 1300 Ohio. We're not only going to have owner occupancy covenant designations on those houses, but the buyer would need to restore them according to the Secretary of Interior's restoration standards for homes.
Wow.
So
Are those rigorous?
they're rigorous, but doable. The great opportunity, and we had I couldn't believe how many people showed up for the open house. I mean, it was very exciting. Not just the neighbors, but people. It's a high traffic area.
High traffic area. It's a beautiful home.
2405 North Grand River, and serious people, questions about it, not running away from it. One of the problems with historic properties is finding people that are interested in them. So this auction and the government's involvement, the Treasurer's Office involvement in it, gives us an opportunity with the folks that care about history and preservation to market and to talk about those interior standards and the value of place in revitalizing our community.
So do you have a history of that home?
You know, I don't have much of one. The neighbors were telling me a few stories about it. It's a beautiful home. It needs work. From
How old is it?
1875.
Oh, wow.
1875.
It's right on Grand River.
Wow.
Grand River and Martin Luther King. It had to be one of the first homes along that stretch, especially at this size. It's right by my house.
How
Many
many
of the
bedrooms?
original 5 bedrooms, many of the original windows. I mean, and the trim is amazing.
Wow.
I mean, I'm looking
Yeah.
at it, we're looking at it, I'm going, you know, either this got replaced in the 30s or 40s or something, or somebody took really good care of this house.
Brings to mind, though, the old movie called The Money Pit. Remember that movie with
Yeah.
Shelley Long?
I own that. I bought that house.
Yeah. That's the challenge that people face when they look at a restoration, isn't it? Now, are there any? Does the government help in any way? Somebody who wants to restore a historic home?
You know, about all that's left is there is a little federal tax credit, but that's a very minor issue.
But because this house went to auction, there's a reasonable assumption it might go for less money.
Oh yeah,
Because
nobody should be paying the county treasurer more than $5,000 or $10,000 for this property. The
Oh,
money,
really?
Then
the
you've
money
got the
needs to
money
go into
to
the
That
house.
gives you the margin,
Yep,
because you
big
can borrow
margin.
against that, right? I mean, the
Yeah,
ultimate value of the home.
that's not going to be easy, but
Oh, okay.
And there's a beautiful house right across the street from it. There's
Now, do we have any idea, in terms of money, what it would take to bring it up to the standards that the Department of Interior would expect?
I would say, you know, roughly between 75 and 100,000.
Well, that's not that bad. I mean, that would be.
It'd be a big house, a beautiful house. It has a great presence on the corridor.
sits up on a rise a little bit.
The challenge with some of those homes that are that old is heating them. You know, it's the $2,000 a month heating bill in the winter that can be the surprise because there's no way to easily insulate it. Is it possible within those federal guidelines to make it more energy efficient, but at the same time be able to?
Oh, sure. I mean, you can do the insulation from inside or outside. You can do restoration of those windows and get similarly quality for energy efficiency to new windows. And it's got a attic space that you can get into, so you can insulate the the head,
Yeah,
like a person wearing a hat, which is one of the most important pieces. The
right.
walls are important, but nothing like the attic.
When will the auction be?
October
I was gonna
9th.
say, well, you really
We're,
do
we're
advance
way in
promote.
advance of this. October 9th,
October 9th.
in the morning. Registration is at 8:30. It'll start at 10 a.m.
Is
at
that
the
a
Lansing
Tuesday?
Center. It's a day of the week.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's a Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that, is there gonna be another open house for that house?
There isn't, but if somebody really wants to see it, they can call the treasurer's office or the land bank office, and I or somebody else will meet them there to show it to them.
Very cool. Are there other homes in this auction in addition to the two
There's
historic?
there's another 20 or 22 homes. So and you can go to the treasurer's website and see the open house schedule.
I was seeing the other day headlines that more and more homes are now being still sold for all cash sales around the country. Is that true here as well? Does that imply speculators?
It does imply speculators. I can only assume that we're seeing a lot of the same thing here. Mortgage foreclosure activity, though, has continued to improve. There's not as many mortgage foreclosures going on. There's not the inventory. The auction this year was radically different than last year. Similar number of homes, similar condition. This year brought in almost twice as much money.
Oh, really?
So, better investors willing to pay more.
Likely investors are gonna live there.
Well, a few.
Few?
One of the folks I'd highlight is Joe Vitale, who is active in the East Side as his broker's license. I think he's selling meds right now for a living. But he's bought houses both years of the last two. He fixes them up very nicely. He's talking about doing a project with Preservation Lansing, maybe on one of the homes. So there's some good people getting the confidence once again to come into the neighborhoods and put the investment that they need to really shine.
Wonderful news. I hope that the people who get the word in time, those that are interested in that kind of historic home, I'm assuming that's a small but dedicated group where the word will go out in a buzz.
Well, Preservation Lands, that was part of it. We have these relationships that we need to form. We're all in this together. Marketing hasn't been something that Preservation Lansing has worked on too much, but they've risen to the task. We've committed some time from Treasurer's side. Michigan Historic Preservation Network has it on their homepage. So the word is getting out there, and it's getting more exposure than it would have if we hadn't gone forward with this type of a working relationship.
Can people see a lot of the inside and pictures online somewhere?
I don't think that that's gotten set up yet.
Oh, that's
and it's the windows are boarded on a lot of this, and so it would be hard to get a decent shot.
Okay.
But I think we had 40 people through the house.
Wow.
In a 2-hour period. It was just busy all the time. So tomorrow, 1300 Ohio from 4 to 6. I'll see folks
That I
there.
don't recognize, that address, but I'm gonna have to.
And that's a home. Well, that's
Where's it
over by
between?
Groesbeck Golf Course. It's on a corner of I'm not going to remember the east-west, but it's a 1900 brick home. Again, you can go to the Michigan Historic Preservation Network homepage and just click on the picture of the home there and get a few more details.
Interesting opportunity.
Well, I know that the one on Grand River is gonna make a big difference in our neighborhood, because everybody talks about it. It's been empty for what, a year, maybe, year and a half, 2 years?
Boy, the neighbor made it sound like a little longer than that even.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Many years ago, I got free rent because there was a historic home in central Illinois when my first husband and I moved there, and in order to keep it insured, they had to have someone live there. It was one of those situations that otherwise the insurance was just exorbitant. So we lived there, and I didn't realize that people have been stealing out of the back of that house for months. There were old Victrolas and wonderful kinds of antique things. She'd been an opera singer who brought back chandeliers from all over the world. They had them stored in the back of the house. I kept hearing what I thought were rats in the back of it.
Giant rats.
They were just very large rats. They were people just stealing the place blind in the back. So yes, it is hard when homes sit empty. Homes are meant to be lived in.
Absolutely.
And they do deteriorate quickly too. Just in terms of, you need living, breathing people in them. What else is new in the area? What else do we need to know?
I need to know.
How does bike share? Did bike share, have you gotten the technology issue straightened out with the bikes?
We had a special board meeting yesterday afternoon. The two creators of the program from A2B Bike Share came up from Ann Arbor to talk to us. We hope to have, yes, the locking mechanism is figured out.
Oh, good.
There's been two bikes in front of City Hall for a week or so, just to test it out, and we should have another 9 or 10 bikes coming by the end of the week. The racks are going to be available also to get those put in. So I would hope that next week we'll be able to give a full rollout to a mini version of that. It's a demonstration. If this is
Right.
really a transformational technology, nobody has done anything quite like this. But the bike is there, the technology, the hardware is figured out, the software was never a problem that we knew of. We're going to test it in the fall, hopefully for 4 to 6 weeks, probably come back in the spring with another 4 to 6 weeks, and then see if we've got the energy and the community support to be able to do a full program rollout later next year.
I found out Sunday night temps are expected to drop to 21 degrees.
When would this be?
Sunday night. Yeah. So that may not be a good night for this may be the rollout that, I'd wait till Monday. I have my hoop house and I have to keep, I can handle about 10 degrees below freezing. Once you start getting down around 21, that's going to be a very cold evening, so I'm going to have to try to figure out how to keep all my stuff.
It was a wonderful September. We were very blessed.
It was. But I still have vivid memories of nice warm 68 degrees on Halloween, so I was hoping that we'd get another month out of it, but maybe not.
It'll come back.
It'll come back. Well, thank you very much for our
Thank you,
monthly
Eric.
wrap-up.
Thank
We
you.
really
I think
appreciate
I'm going
it.
to take a run by and kind of watch what's going to happen at that house, because it's a beautiful home.
I would be excited to see what it would look like restored.
And you cut away all the dumb shrubs that are near it. And
Yeah.
It's spectacular.
Come see the auction. It's a great social event.
I should do that.
It's a
and capture
completely
some video.
different human psychology. I mean, it's just fascinating, the folks that show up at auctions.
Can I bring my video camera?
Absolutely.
Oh, good. Then I'll do that.
Interesting.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
We'll do that. And I might even drag along some of my students.
They're not buying knickknacks and tchotchkes. They're buying homes.
This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We've been talking with Ingham County Treasurer Eric Schertzing, and we're going to switch gears now, but stay in the same vein by talking to Valerie Marvin, who is with the Historical Society of Greater Lansing. It only took me about 6 months to learn the proper name of that place so that I don't get it wrong all the time.
Congratulations, Bonnie.
You're now a member. That's the test.
That's the test. And we're also joined by Steve Bohnet of Bohnet Electric, and also to talk a little bit about Oktoberfest. We're going to be talking about all kinds of activities coming up here in the community. And Valerie, you have some things with the Historical Society.
We do. We are getting ready for our biggest fundraising event of the year. This upcoming Saturday, we are having our annual auction that we host to benefit our Lansing Historical Museum Fund. And we are very excited to be hosted by the Board of Water and Light this year. We're going to be at the Dye Water Conditioning Plant that's on Cedar Street in between Michigan and Kalamazoo.
Okay, it's the one that has the big new logo on the side.
It is, yes. They've been doing a lot of work on the building for the last couple of years. And I just received an email last week. The sod will be down, I promise.
Is that the one that has the remarkable mural inside?
Remarkable murals, plural. There are actually 3 of them. It was built in the 1930s. It was a WPA project, Works Progress Administration. So it was a combined partnership between the Board of Water and Light and the federal government to build it. Built from 38 to 39. And when it opened, it was, and still is today, one of the largest water conditioning facilities in the area. What's interesting is when you go in and you learn about how the technology works, a lot of the process is completely unchanged from how it was early on. The difference is, well, the difference is,
Oh yeah, Lansing's got great
it's
water.
interesting because when you look at the history of the plant, in the 1920s, they were talking about building this already and the need to produce cleaner water for Lansing and to soften the water because there was a lot of concern about some of the minerals and so on. But it still services a huge amount of the greater Lansing area. And we're going to be learning a little bit about the plant and what they do. We're also going to be learning a lot about its construction and the fantastic artwork. One thing that's interesting about the 1930s is when we were trying to put people back to work during the Depression. Yes, we wanted to create jobs, but we also wanted to inspire people
Yes.
to want to do their job.
Imagine that. In today's world.
We had an attitude toward work as being noble.
Yes, yes. And there was a thought process that the worker should be inspired to walk into work every day. They should be inspired by their surroundings.
The idea that we would invest in beauty in our workplace. Wow.
Mm-hmm. And the art is all water focused as a result. One of the murals the focus is hydroelectric power, and you see figures representing agriculture and labor coming together around this large dam. And you see scientists who are working. Some of it is it can smack a little of extorting our natural resources. But on the other hand, this was still seen as a sign of progress in that era.
Absolutely.
How can we take our resources and how can we best use them?
Issues of ecology and environment didn't occur until much later in our consciousness. Yeah.
To be fair, though, this is the same conditioning plant that they installed several solar panels just across the street from for the Board of Water and Light a few years ago as part of producing cleaner energy to use at it. There's also 2 other murals in the atrium that focus on water as both a blessing and a curse. You have water as a beneficial life force, so crops growing, swimming, very lovely scenes reminding us that we literally cannot live without good water. On the other hand, you have a complete juxtaposition and water as a destructive force. Floods. There are people literally being swept away.
Looks like Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah, it does. It hits a little close right now, considering what we've all been hearing in the news.
It's a good place to store Canadian nuclear leftover nuclear. They had maybe a more sanguine attitude toward water in the world.
There's also sculpture in the building. When you walk in the doors, there's a sculpture by Clivia Calder, who also did some work out at MSU.
Any relation to Alexander?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
No.
Now, one of the murals was done by I'm forgetting his name, Jackson Pollock's brother.
Charles
Pollock. Thank you. So he was on faculty at MSU for many years.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And
interesting.
He also did
so he was much more of a literalist than his brother.
He got into more abstract art. Later on, into the 50s.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
his approach changed.
So this was earlier?
Yes, this was in the 30s. The murals were done in the late 30s into the early 40s. In fact, they actually have
That's
photos.
That's the WPA era, yeah.
Of him working.
That was pretty typical of a WP era style, was to move into abstract.
Mm-hmm.
That was not uncommon.
Yeah, they went from the literal to the the heroic, early heroics, that kind of thing. Almost Stalinist in some cases. Unless you had Diego Rivera, then you didn't have Yeah, that was a wonderful era when government actually invested in giving artists work in addition to just picking up leaves.
Well, and the great thing about this building is they had the top artists from the sculpture department, from the painting department. They brought in the best people in Michigan to work on this building, which I think really says something about Lansing at the time.
Well, it's been hard to get in there, too. Isn't there one day a year that they let people in, so this would be another day?
It is. It's open for be a tourist in your own town. It is closed for security reasons. But this is a very rare opportunity to get a glimpse of a fantastic building.
Wow.
And we will be touring it as part of the event. We'll also be talking about some tie-ins with the local auto industry. When they designed the filter gallery areas where the water filtration actually takes place, they went to Oldsmobile and they used the 1937 two-door sedan that Oldsmobile was producing at the time as inspiration for the consoles they created for the control panels. And,
really?
And then on top of the control panels, the actual levers that they would use are basically an Oldsmobile car door handle from the time.
Oh, really?
So it's very cool because
you
have the big national movements in art with the WPA, but you also have a very local feel to it because of that Oldsmobile
This would be a good time, too, to let Steve jump in because he was responsible for the restoration of these remarkable modernism lights, really. I mean, they're pretty spectacular. Tell us a little bit about them because they're like little spaceships in there.
Well, we learned a lot about what happens to a light fixture in an environment that's full of humidity.
Ooh, I'll bet.
Because the gallery is full of humidity. And so over the years, remarkably, the fixtures had stayed fairly stagnant, but because they're so far up in the gallery. but there was a lot of, they had to be hand polished. There could be no powder coating or any type of process where there was heating because they would outgas, which basically peppers holes through them. So it was a hand polishing that refinished the fixtures, and then it had to be cold processed lacquer to coat them again. So
You restored the fixtures that were there, you did not install new ones.
yeah, we restored the fixtures. We did, however, convert them from, let's see, each fixture had a single, well, at one time a 1500 watt bulb. They went down to 1000 watt bulbs, and we replaced those with compact fluorescents. So the light value is actually more in the gallery now with much less energy consumption.
Now, when you do something with light like that, does light have an impact on those murals? I mean, in addition to having to withstand the humidity, then do the
This is
murals
in the
have to?
filter gallery. The murals are in the entryway.
Okay, so that's
Right.
you don't have to worry about maintaining those.
Correct.
Ah,
I would think that ultraviolet light would have an effect on those murals. I do know that the murals were repainted in what, 1980 something?
89, I believe it was.
By the original artist.
oh
He went
really?
over, he was in his 80s, I believe, and he went over and repainted a good portion of the murals that had decayed over time because it is, even the entryway is a fairly moist environment. So
I have visions to remember the woman in the 80s that recently redid I think it was a Caravaggio
Yeah.
of Jesus. She came in with great confidence and just ruined the whole thing.
this turned out much
This
different.
better-
This turned out
this
very
was
good. Yes, he
good.
still
I think
had,
what's-
still had his neck.
These
Good.
are spectacular murals too.
Right.
I've not seen them. I mean, they're so
Spectacular.
hard to get in to see. That's one day a year that you have to be in the right place at the right time.
Right, and you kind of get pushed through during that day.
Oh, do you?
Because there's so many people
I'll
coming,
bet.
and a lot of little kids. There
Oh.
won't be a lot of little kids at our event.
Yeah.
Be one.
Greater Lansing Historic Society has a beautiful website, or a blog site, is it?
Yep.
As opposed to a website, that has a lot of the pictures of the interior that are beautiful photographs of the interior that you can really get a sense of what it looks like, and both the gallery and the entryway.
And people should be encouraged to bring their cameras.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, great.
'cause
Oh,
it's-
yeah. Well, in addition, you're going to be giving things away at an auction.
Well,
No, not
auctioning
giving.
things
Oh,
off.
I-
You're going to start rumors, Bonnie. Yes, we will be having a silent auction with about 100 items available for people to bid on. Quite a range of things. We have some local memorabilia. We have a one-of-a-kind poster that was created from photographs of neon signs all over Lansing, some vintage, some modern. We have china from the old Masonic Temple that was downtown Lansing, that's now Cooley Law School, an early 1920s building. We also have gift certificates to sporting events, theater, local restaurants. We have some really interesting items we're going to be live auctioning as well.
in addition to the silent?
Yes. Some of them are tradition auction items, a 2-night stay at a condo in Glen Arbor, Michigan. We have 2 nights at a historic hotel on Mackinac Island, actually. But some of them have much more of a local flavor. One of my favorites is one of our members owns a 1916 Rio touring car that was actually made in Lansing, in Rio Town, and she is auctioning off a driving tour of the city in this car, and it is fantastic.
It's a big automobile.
Oh,
It is. It is.
God, that would be interesting.
And she's actually going to bring the car to the event.
Oh,
and we're going to have
cool.
it parked right out in front so people can see it.
Oh, that'd be great.
We have a couple lamps that Bohnet donated for the auction. I think 1930s. Bill told me they were from. We have it's a modern clock, but it's vintage style. Those ball clocks, they were called, very atomic looking, from the 50s. They have the thin spires coming out and the balls on the end.
Yes.
Lynn and Owens donated one of those for the auction. We have dinner for 8 at the Harper House, which is Lansing's biggest historic home over in the Morris River Drive area.
Where's that?
It's
Right across from the
in front of
governor's.
residence.
Where he doesn't
Spectacular
live?
home.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Where he doesn't live, the governor?
Where
Where
he
he
occasionally
doesn't
spends the
live,
night.
We
Right
found
now.
out in today's newspaper, though, he does spend time on Mackinac Island.
Apparently so, $700,000 worth of upgrades.
It needs it.
So do plenty of places.
They aren't going to let us have our auction there next year, though, I'm pretty sure.
I don't think so. Especially not the way we talk about the governor.
This is is where I put on I work at the Capitol and I'm nonpartisan hat.
Yes,
I have
indeed.
that same.
Plenty of people do for very good reason. This is a powerful crowd. But yes, indeed. Let me find out a little bit more then. So when is this, and what times do people come
It's
for
on
the
Saturday,
tour? And
October 5th. It's at 4 o'clock.
that's this Saturday.
Yes. There is a ticket price. You can purchase tickets on the website or at the door. It's nominal. And I will tell you, just seeing the building itself is worth the ticket price. It is
Do
a
you have to have a
phenomenal
ticket before you
interior.
show up, or can you still
Nope,
purchase
you
one
can buy
the-
them at the door.
Okay.
They will be available. You will have a chance to bid on all of the items. There will be light hors d'oeuvres served. And I think it'll be really a fun night. We have a fantastic just array of things. We have book packages.
Ah.
We have memberships to some local history groups like Preservation Lansing, actually, and the Michigan Historic Preservation Network for folks who want to learn more about those. We have a dessert set, snack sets from the 1950s. We have packages from local businesses, coffee from Paramount, overnight stays at the English Inn, at Cozy Koi Bed and Breakfast. A lot of local businesses have just been so generous
Oh,
in
that's great.
supporting us, and we're very excited.
It was very successful last year, wasn't it? Where was it last year?
Last year we were at the Old Michigan Theater
Oh, that's
downtown,
right. Yeah.
and then the first year we were at what is now Comerica Bank.
Yes, yes.
So we try to move to a different historic venue each year. And it's fun because I get to stand and greet people as they come in the door. And we always have a few people that say, I'm just here for the building. But it meant so much to me because I was talking with someone the other day, and he came to the auction last year, and he said, you know, I remember as you were giving the tour, you made the comment that a building is just a building until you know the story behind it.
Ah, true.
And he said, I've not forgotten that. And I remember all of the stories you told that night about that building. And he said, now every time I walk past or I bike past or I drive past, I look at that and think, there are so many stories, so many collective memories the city of Lansing has. And those need to be shared.
That'll be a wonderful event.
You know, a couple of the real kind of quirky items that people may need to know more about is, for example, a tour of a junkyard, Friedland Iron.
Oh, where they do the Scrap Fest.
Yep. And they have their own museum in there of things they've saved
Oh, really?
from the junk pile.
Ah.
It's a very fascinating tour to go through.
Hmm.
So I mean, that's on it. I donated. I know.
Jimmy Hoffa's body?
No, that'd be close. That'd get us a lot of bids.
I always think it's in one of those cubes.
I donated a Ted Nugent signed record.
Oh.
Michigan Rocks from
Ooh, ouch.
1970 something.
Terrible Ted.
Yeah, yeah. He's changed since then.
We have a Martha Dixon cookbook,
Oh,
actually, that we're going to
good.
be auctioning
Oh,
off.
good. That'll be wonderful. Yes, my husband opened for Ted Nugent at Cobo Hall
Cobo.
years ago. Yes, indeed. And I got sort of kidney punched by somebody who didn't think it was a good idea for me to be videoing on stage. Always took a dim view of Ted's crew since those days. He came into dress rehearsal with a Glock in his waistband. So Ted's always been an energetic character. Yes.
One of the items I know I'm going to be bidding on is a walking tour out at MSU's campus.
Oh.
Susan Bandes, who was with Kresge for many years. She is on the art history faculty. She has donated a walking tour of WPA era construction and art out at MSU.
That's wonderful. When will that be?
Whenever you want it to be. If you win
Oh,
the
so
item,
it's a one-on-one
yes,
walking
it is.
tour.
Yep,
Yeah,
it
that's
can
pretty
have
special.
Goodness,
up to
that's
about a dozen
fantastic.
people. She used to do it
Wow.
actually as an evening college class, and now that that program has largely been canceled, there's no other way to have this experience.
This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We're talking with Valerie Marvin of the Historical Society of Greater Lansing, and I'm really sorry that had disappeared. You know, many things in evening college were really wonderful sort of town-gown connection opportunities. I'm sorry that one, but now it's been revived as a donation for the Historical Society.
It
auction.
has.
That's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things Valerie's too modest to say is her husband has donated a couple different photographs, and he did the neon photographs. It's
Oh,
pretty
did he?
darn unique. But he also donated a panoramic photo of downtown Lansing. He stitched together 20 photographs
Oh, he
of the
did.
skyline.
Ah. So
that's
he
pretty-
was able to stitch those together
Mhm.
seamlessly. And what are the dimensions on that panorama?
Oh gosh, I think it's at least 5 foot long, by maybe 14 inches.
Oh, that'd be
16
so
inches,
cool.
somewhere
What
in there.
that's one of a kind, really. He's not going to do it
Yeah.
again.
Mhm.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, that's amazing. So he's got that stitched together somewhere in Photoshop, I assume.
Well, we're embarrassing each other too. Something Bill donated was a collection of vintage political buttons from different races in
Oh.
Michigan over the years. We have both parties represented, but it's quite
Do you have a
fun.
Sultan?
Oh yeah.
Do you? Oh, the world's favorite happy warrior politician
Yep.
from here.
We have Phil Hart, little heart
Yeah,
pins.
wow.
We have G. Menon Williams bow tie with
Oh.
green and white
They were
polka
cleverer back then.
They were.
They were very clever.
They're just round buttons now with we're so into branding and messaging,
Yeah.
you can't deviate and do anything different.
And speaking of politics, Tim Skubik, who does Off the Record, which is a local political show, actually donated the chance to come in and watch a taping of that,
Ah,
which can be quite interesting when you get several legislators and lobbyists and so on around the table.
gee, if I bought that, maybe I could yell from the background. I mean, like a backbencher.
It is a silent observation. I think it says in the
Silent.
contract.
What would they give the money back if I yell? Or
Do you remember Pat McCarthy? He was a journalist
No.
around here for a long time. He worked
No.
for the Lansing State Journal. He worked for AP. And he worked for a couple other media outlets. But before Pat died, he just died. He's quite an accomplished artist, mostly watercolors. But he donated a nude sketch he did at MSU in art class back in the 40s that was finished by John D. Martelli, who was another WPA artist.
wow.
So it's pretty unique. I mean, it's two artists working on the same thing. One is a student, one is the professor.
Tell me again the timetable that people need to be aware of from now. If they're coming to this event, they need to be there for the tour at what time? And then there's
The event starts at 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock and runs
The
to-
bidding will go until about 5:45,
Okay.
and then that will close. We'll have the quick live auction at that point, and the tour will start at 6 o'clock.
Do you have a real live auctioneer? Or are you...
We do.
Oh.
Bill Triola is
Oh,
donating
okay.
his services,
Cool.
so he's going to be doing that.
That's worth
portion of the
$15 alone
yeah,
to
yeah.
watch him. He's
Yeah.
going to be, he's different.
Those are fascinating to watch.
He'll make it fun.
Yeah, that'll be cool. Oh, a great event. What else is coming up for the Historical Society they ought to know about after the auction?
Well, as healthcare is such a fun topic right now, we're going to be later in October, I think it's the 17th, we're going to be having two of the ladies from the Sparrow Hospital Women's Guild coming in and talking about the history of healthcare in Lansing, how our major hospitals got their start, a lot of smaller hospitals that have gone by the wayside. For example, there was a maternity hospital at one point in Lansing. There was a nurses training school connected with Sparrow that most people have no idea ever existed. And there were some pretty seedy places too. The earliest hospital on record in the area was the Ingham County Pest House, which basically was a very
Delousing
poorly...
operation?
No, it was a very poorly built structure outside of the city where you would send people with contagious diseases.
Oh, yes, of course.
Sadly, some of these pest houses, and each county had one, some of them I've actually seen were located right next to the local cemetery,
Very
which
handy.
I always thought was very tactless.
Just kind of roll them over when you... Oh, yes, yeah.
We'll be hearing about St. Lawrence and St. Lawrence's creation as being a part of the Catholic Church in Lansing.
They have quite a few photographs in one hallway there that
Yes.
shows the history of St. Lawrence.
My in-laws actually met on an elevator at St. Lawrence.
Did they really?
Believe it or not.
They were at visiting hours or something?
They both worked there.
Oh, they worked
actually.
there. Oh, okay. Oh.
So we're also looking for people who worked there to come and tell their stories, whether they were employed by the hospital, maybe they remember the birth of their child. Some of the significant events, for example, the Morlock quads that were famous in Lansing in the early 30s, famous across the country actually, were born at Sparrow Hospital. And they had a contest in the newspaper to name the children.
And the parents
were
agree to this?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Money.
There were 4 girls. Oh yeah, these girls were in every ad and endorsed everything over the years. In fact, the mayor at the time actually helped run their father for, I think it was city constable, because he was unemployed when they were born.
I read a very sad book years ago about the Dion quintuplets who had a miserable life as a result of this. So did the Morlocks do well? Or?
I think they did. There were a couple that stayed local. What's interesting though is they had this contest to name them, and they actually chose names based on, oh, let me get this right. E.W. was it?
ABC.
E.W. Sparrow Hospital.
Oh,
The
yeah.
initials.
Yeah.
So for each
So-
letter?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they ended up with...
The E was Edna. I of course should have looked this up before I came in. I don't remember what all 4 of them were. But
They
you
weren't
can find
bad
them
names,
online.
though.
They
No, they
weren't
weren't.
bad
No,
names.
they were
weren't
all
bad names.
traditional
Yeah.
female names for the era.
Oh, yeah, you could have ended up with some real stinkers, I'm afraid. Yes,
See, they
it's a
were
good
the
thing they
only
were kind.
quads to live in the world.
At
Well,
that
see,
time.
that was so rare before in vitro that
Mhm.
it was really a very big
So it was a
deal.
big,
Yeah.
big deal internationally, and their whole life they were involved in promotional opportunities.
Well, see, hospitals took a more cavalier attitude towards baby naming in that era too. I do know that of my grandmother's four daughters, three of them had their names, the name she wanted, renamed by the nurses. They wrote different names on the birth certificates because they decided that it was important for these kids not to have names that were too ethnic.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, and so Regina Theodosia became Virginia, and Estella, Stella became Estelle, and my mother, who was supposed to be Alana, became Helen.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
it was kind of interesting. And I mean, they didn't find out until years later. And then when they got to school, they had to use those names because they were on their birth certificate. So it's sort of a cavalier attitude towards personal freedom back in that era.
You won't like that name.
Now, see, maybe some of those stories from the hospital days, you may not want to open that Pandora's box. You'd have people like my grandmother showing up and beating their fist on the table. So.
But that's all part of the story.
Well, that's true.
Good
That's
or
true.
bad, that's all part of the story. You look at the history of McLaren, most of us think of it as, I still find myself calling it Ingham. That
Yeah, I
was
was going to say, which one
actually,
is that?
at one point in time, it was the Ingham County Tuberculosis Sanatorium.
Yes, yeah.
So there is certainly a darker side to some of these things.
I had to do historical research on a book, and I was interested to find out that they used to have open air facilities in the schools for the TB students in the back. So it would be a porch where they would come and it would be open air. It was a sunshine place. They figured sunlight might help kill the TB germs. I mean, so there was some strange,
Mm-hmm.
if we look back at medical practice over the years, they've certainly gone through fads and
But if,
fashions.
in 50 years, they'll look back and say, oh my gosh, can you believe when they
It won't
fill
take
in the
50 for
blank?
me with a lot of it.
It's amazing, though, too, how an extraordinary patient or an extraordinary situation could really help one of these institutions. I mean, what Sparrow must have reaped from being able to keep these quads alive,
See, yeah, yeah.
because this is at a time, my father was born just a few years later, and he was born premature. He had a low birth weight. He was born in a rural hospital setting,
Yeah.
and this was before incubators. He was literally in a crib packed with extra diapers around him and a light bulb hanging over him to keep him warm.
He was a
Like a chicken
hatchling.
coop. Chicken coop.
Yes, he
Yeah.
was a little hatchling. Oh God, isn't it? Well, but considering the fact that didn't they pump oxygen into the early incubators and cause a lot of kids to go
Yes.
blind?
Yes.
He was lucky they didn't have an incubator in that
They
era.
had a lot of students at the School for the Blind that was how their disability began,
Yeah,
actually.
these are really fascinating stories though, because I think we lose track of some of these if we don't start capturing more and more of them.
Well, and there's always the risk of going back and repeating the same mistakes.
Well, true.
There was an interesting article this past week, and actually it was a video clip on the New York Times about thalidomide and how that has gone around the medical cycle again and
Yes,
is
it is.
coming back as treatment for completely different diseases. I think it was leprosy in South
It's
America.
leprosy.
And they were saying that even though they've been so careful about, don't take this when you're pregnant, don't do this, don't do that, they've started to see some thalidomide babies born again.
Oh,
And
that's so sad.
it's so hard because so many medical treatments, you don't know what they're going to do exactly until they happen.
Right.
And I think maybe I'm naive, but I think a lot of times we go in wanting to improve, wanting to do better. The problem is there's no way to know what the long-term effects are in many
Well,
of
we
these
become a
cases.
giant longitudinal study when the
Mhm.
drug is finally into the society, and that's when we do find out some of these consequences. And it really can be horrific. I use thalidomide in the teaching that I do and then remind people that it wasn't that long ago, however, that we had our own Vioxx. They figure 54,000 people excess heart deaths from using Vioxx, and yet I know there's one woman on a listserv I'm on who keeps complaining that she wishes they'd give her Vioxx back, because it was the only thing that helped with the pain.
Mhm.
And quite often when people are really having problems, they'll try just about anything. So, oh, this should be fascinating to hear all those stories. Wow.
So October 17th, I believe it is. It's a Thursday evening. That'll be 7 o'clock at the Capital Area District Library downtown.
The library does so many interesting programs like that. It really is
They
a
do.
great place to be able to, a lot of your activities take place there. Bill?
One of the things we'll have to ask them if they're going to talk about polio in Lansing,
Ah,
Oh, very interesting.
because people are certainly still alive that went through polio treatment.
mm-hmm.
Yes, and the old iron lung,
Yeah.
I mean, that was that whole era.
We couldn't go outside when it was hot.
couldn't go to the lake and bathe.
Oh yeah, we couldn't go in public swimming pools.
No, absolutely
Yeah.
not.
So I didn't learn how to swim until just probably 2 years later than I should have, because couldn't go swimming.
Well, one of my classmates in Ohio was a polio victim later than most because she, as an Amish young girl, they wouldn't vaccinate, so she was vulnerable to the polio virus, which was still circulating. So yeah, polio was a huge scourge. I mean, I don't think we realize how the lives of kids were really circumscribed. You know, when I was a kid, summer came and you were not encouraged to go out and socialize. That was very dangerous.
It's very scary.
Well, and there are still plenty of people who had polio as a child who still suffer the consequences today.
And we've
have
seen
a
the
friend of the
slapback.
family that
Yeah.
just had to have a leg amputated.
Oh,
She had polio as a child and had always had trouble with it, and it had just gotten to the point where it was too much.
and they're seeing that where you succeeded in conquering it and it comes back and gets you 50 years later. Yeah. Very interesting. So this is you're going to be
It'll be real upbeat. So that's why we're going to
Little
talk.
dark.
That's why we're going to talk about the Oktoberfest in Lansing next.
back to Papa.
We go from the high
What a
and
nice,
low.
nice segue there, Bill.
Yeah, I was
This
trying to
is-
think of a way.
This is LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan, and we are going to talk about Oktoberfest with Steve Bohnet, and he's going to tell us about what's coming up this Saturday, right?
Well, yes, and hopefully I can bring some sunshine to this conversation with food, music, and beer.
Yes, well, that'll do it.
Yeah, that always makes everybody happy. It is Old Town's event that happens every year, and it's growing and growing each year. All the proceeds go towards OTCA, Old Town,
Old Town
which
Commercial
is
Association.
right, which is a nonprofit, and all the money goes back into the community for free family events that are held during the year. A lot of people don't know what they're paying for when they come in, and it's not just for putting on the festivals. It's for a lot of the other activities that happen in Old Town. So that's
They
important
do a
to know.
Dickens thing, I know.
Dickens Christmas.
Yeah.
There's the doggy trick or treat.
Oh, yes, yeah.
There's also Chuck of the Town, which is really popular.
I don't know what that is. What's
Chuck of the
that?
Town is where they encourage all ages to come in and do artwork on the sidewalks in chalk.
Oh,
And,
I've seen the results of it. I didn't know
yeah,
that's what it was called.
some pretty fantastic things for some pretty simple, fun things.
Oh.
So yeah.
So what kind of bands are you going to have for?
We're going to have traditional German bands. At the end of each evening, we're going to have a little more of a mix of alternative bands. This is kind of
Alt polka is a very narrow genre.
It's not.
Heavy metal polka.
Yeah,
We
speed
have-
metal polka.
We are not an authentic German festival. We are a German-inspired festival.
I take it
Which-
those are categories you have to have.
Well, when it comes to authentic German festivals, for instance, you have to have wooden picnic tables, which is something
Really?
that unless you have a park space where you can go to with picnic tables, it's pretty impossible, because for years we've looked through municipalities to either rent or sell us picnic tables.
Is there an inspector that comes by and beats you by
I
the side of
think
the head
I
if
think
your
there is
picnic tables are
somewhere
composite material?
A person that is in charge of official Oktoberfest that
Really?
deem this yes or no.
Wow.
There's a lot of aficionados that come to these events that go to Oktoberfest all over the country and in other countries. So they're very strict about what goes on at the festivals to
Really?
make it an authentic German
Do
festival.
they wear those funny little outfits?
Lederhosen?
I didn't want to say
They
that.
typically are dressed in garb that would be Oktoberfest appropriate, yes.
So this Oktoberfest has been going on for how many years?
This is, I believe, the 8th year.
Oh, okay, so it's a relatively new one.
Fairly new, yeah.
And by being German inspired,
We have German.
you have more flexibility. In
We do. We have German food. We have an age range that's anywhere. It's a 21 and over event. It's an event with beer, so we feel it appropriate that it's not an event for children or for young people.
Interesting.
The food is authentic German. We go to local vendors food vendors that they cook outside of their normal realm, and they cook real German food.
Give me an idea of what the menu would contain. Are we talking your sauerbraten?
Yeah, brats, sauerkraut, I want to say the name. It's with a
Spatzel?
yes.
Spatzel.
Thank you. Spetzel or Spatzel. I'm
Yeah.
always not sure which
I'm
one of
not
the
either.
two. Those types of foods, yes.
Okay.
And even one of our vendors, Eggy Mays, who's in Old Town, is doing some German-inspired desserts. So they even take it to that level. We were like, you know, the committee said we don't have to have German uh, desserts. We can kind of play off of that, but they came up with German authentic German desserts, so
Wow.
even down to that level. And we have 15 different beers.
All German?
That's a
So
big deal.
Not all German,
not
no,
all
'cause-
German, but
yeah.
most of them are. A lot of things like a lot of them are local. North Peak Happy Pumpkin Ale is from Traverse City, as a matter of fact. So a lot of stuff that
Does
is.
that mean it's made from pumpkins? Or is that just,
I would
Or
assume
we
that
put-
there is something in the fermentation.
Yeah, they
Yep.
put pumpkin in it.
I can remember my dad used to make dandelion wine. There was very little dandelion, a lot of wine.
A lot of wine? Yeah.
So I don't know how much of the pumpkin is a
seems
part of
like
the
an odd
flavoring
thing for
or a
beer.
part of
I
the
guess, maybe.
fermentation
Yeah.
process. But one
This
of
is on tap or in bottles or?
everything when you go in, you're going to get a mug. You're going to get drink or meal tickets that can be used for either. And so it's all on tap. You bring your mug with you. If you go in for both nights, the admission if you buy online prior to the event is $15.
We can't say amounts, I don't believe.
I'm sorry, I will take that
It's
back.
nonprofit, so and that's on the radio station. We can't even say when it's free.
Okay.
Isn't that odd? We're not allowed to say that it's free, but we'll just say that
It's a
for-
price you have to
Yes,
pay.
you pay a price to get your tickets, and then you can
It's-
do
Which
what
you can
want.
check online how much it
Yeah.
is.
Yes, you can check online, and then it is a different amount when you buy at the door.
So you
But that covers if you are going to the event both nights, that is your admission for both nights. You need to save your wristband and save your mug and bring it back with you because that will get you admission again for the second night. So
And if you live it up too much the first night, boy, wow.
that
You gotta
is,
work it off the second
we
night,
do
work off all
have,
those brats.
I was going to say, we do have in place for people who want to drink responsibly. We have Dean Transportation who is providing a bus from the MSU Union for anybody that's in East Lansing to the festival and back on the hour
Oh, that's great.
from 6 p.m. till 11 p.m. Both nights. So yeah, if you want to go out party, have a good time, you can get home safely to
That's
East
wonderful.
Lansing, to campus, whatever.
That's a great
How many
idea.
people usually come to this now?
Typically, it's about 4,000. Weather is always a factor. The better the weather, the bigger the event.
That's a lot of people in
It's
Old Town.
been growing, and
In a tent?
yes, everything is. We have some patio areas, but most of it's tenants. So if we do get rain, we're protected. We do have a VIP area, and you can buy VIP tables at oldtownoktoberfest.com. I have to think about .com or .org. .com, and that's a really fun way to do that. You can buy a whole table for 8. So if you kind of gives you a lot of little amenities, table service, and all kinds of things with that.
Oh, that's
So,
nice.
Traveling in New York and Chicago this last year, the most popular sort of new outdoor restaurants are German restaurants, like
Really?
beer gardens,
mhm.
outdoor German beer gardens, and they put them in unique places like under bridges, and
Really?
they're huge. It's a big deal. I don't know what it is. And they
People
serve,
like getting to, do they sing?
no, they play
No.
ping pong.
Ping.
Yeah, things like that. It's sort of an odd mix. So those would not be a traditional German beer garden that I knew
German
of.
inspired. German
I
inspired.
remember
Inspired beer gardens.
German inspired
I never
ping
thought
pong.
I never thought of German culture as that inspiring, but if it is, maybe it's okay.
Only during Oktoberfest.
Only yeah. But tell me, do they dance the polka? I mean,
Yeah,
is that,
oh yeah. For instance, our Friday night we have the High Notes, and they are a band that has been with Oktoberfest, this particular Oktoberfest, for many years. Saturday night, the Happy Wanderers and the Polish Muslims. And the
Ah,
Polish Muslims are hugely
They're
popular.
they
huge.
are.
Yeah.
They are.
First time I heard that name.
One of my students did a feature on them and just loved them. Yeah.
Yeah. And so these are bands that we have had at many events that are very, very popular with the people that come. So yeah, a lot of the festival. The only reason we're putting a little mix in is because Old Town is a town of diversity.
Oh, it
And
is.
so we want to have maybe appeal to a little bit younger crowd, maybe a little bit more of a 20s and 30s crowd, not 1920s, but 20-year-old and 30-year-old crowd with some interesting bands at the end of the evening. And a lot of times, people that are older at that point or have had their fill of German music, polka music, have left the festival. So,
Right, right,
and a lot
They're
of people
home
actually,
sleeping.
right.
a lot of people though actually stay and enjoy that music as well.
I'll
So,
bet. I'll bet
yeah.
it exposes them
So
to
it
a whole new
kinda-
audience, I
yeah.
would think.
yeah.
You know, one of the things that the Historical Society is auctioning off is a complete set of tickets to all the Old Town festivals.
Oh, wow.
That's a pretty
Well,
big
that'd be
deal.
great.
Oh, there's a lot of them.
Oh, that's a
Go
lot.
through them
Yeah.
real quick. 'Cause I can't
There's
remember.
Blues Fest, Jazz Fest, Oktoberfest, Festival of the Sun, Festival of the Moon, and Taste of Old Town.
Wow.
So it's a
very
great
cool.
package.
What I love about the polka, because I grew up, I'm Lithuanian by birth. The Bucqueroux is a sort of affectation. You get a free name change out of a divorce, and I saw the movie Buckaroo Banzai. So 30 years ago, I became a Buckaroo and put a French spelling on it. So I'm very much Lithuanian. That means I grew up with that polka music. And there is something really amazing about people who dance the polka well. Do you get some of the people who are really great polka dancers?
Oh yeah, a lot of the people in the audience that come are very, very seasoned polka dancers. So
And it
it's
is
really
a
interesting to
lot
watch.
of work.
Oh, it
When
is.
my sister and brother-in-law had their wedding anniversary this last year, they had a 50th wedding anniversary. They had a polka band.
Yes.
And I haven't danced the polka since maybe I was 9. That is a lot of work.
It is.
You move.
The only person I could get to dance with me was my sister, and we danced to Wheels of Fire at some festival in Detroit. And I don't think she's ever going to forgive me because I think I spun her so hard she went off into the crowd.
She caught fire.
It's a vigorous dance.
It is. It is. You're paid for it for days
Yeah.
afterwards. Yes, you'll run out of breath very quickly. No, you have to be in shape to do the polka. There's
Very
no-
much better shape than I thought. I hurt the next day.
Maybe Bill, there's a whole new round of exercise classes. we
Yeah,
can
polka.
start. But that's an awful lot of fun when you get people together for German food and that. And,
Right.
Yeah. Ah.
One of the other features that we have both nights a psychic, which is kind of
Cool.
different. But we had really good reactions from Festival of the Sun and Moon, and so we brought her back. She's very popular with the crowd. So
Now that wouldn't be a traditional German, would it?
No, that
Didn't they
would be
chase down
inspired.
That would be
the?
German inspired.
I think they were chasing down the gypsy psychics.
unless she was channeling something German, that might
Something
be.
German. So she does a performance, a cold read of people?
She does card reading. Yep. You can
Oh, she
sit
does
down-
card
you can sit-
reading.
Sit down with her one-on-one and card read, and you would pay for her just like you would food or drink with tickets. So
Wow. Well, that's fascinating.
So yeah, so it's
I saw a
interesting. if we do
psychic at
something a little
the
different.
Ingham County Fair this year, so it may be the same person. I don't know. Which madam do you have?
Her name is Willow Richmond.
Willow Witchman.
Richmond,
Richmond. Okay.
not Witchman.
Not
She's not a witch.
Okay. Well, that's
That comes later in the month. Later in October is
Yeah,
the
that's
Halloween.
October.
Well, that's interesting.
oh,
Yeah,
That's
that's a
an
smart.
interesting
That's kind of a
mix.
cool thing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, think about all the people they have never seen that.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's
We look for interesting and diverse things at the festivals that are interesting to people. Festival of the Moon and Sun, we had a photo booth, for instance. A couple that came and brought props and everything, so you could have your photo taken
cool.
with your friends or whatever. So
I was just at a wedding where they did that. Of course, they skew younger age. It was somebody my son's age. That was the funniest thing to watch in your whole life.
Tintype photos?
No,
old fashioned?
well, they're not tintype. They look like photo booths, except they wear props. They put on the strangest clothing and hats and things.
Oh wow. My
odd.
sister and my mother and I did a photo at Sears a few years before she passed, and we couldn't resist the props there either. So we got rubber ducks and feather boas.
That's
Yeah,
the kind of thing they
yeah,
do.
yeah.
There's a lot of fun things going on out there in the world.
That's cool. That's what I always like about Old Town. There's sort of a unique twist on a lot of these. I mean, the German, I'm assuming that the rigid German festivals are very strict about certain things, and probably wouldn't be having that psychic there.
No, probably
Yeah.
not.
Well, it's wonderful. So that's Friday and Saturday?
It's Friday and Saturday, which is the 4th and 5th, and we start at 6 p.m. on Friday night, and then the festival starts, that goes until 11 p.m., and then Saturday the festival starts at 2 in the afternoon and goes until 11 p.m.
And don't forget to also check out the auction at the Board of Water and Light on Saturday. So this is Lansing Online News Radio, LCC Radio, WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan with Bonnie and Bill, and we'll see everybody back on Monday night. Next Monday night at 7 p.m. Thank you very much for tuning in.
I did not know you had to have official German.
That is cool.
Wow.
It's fun tonight.
There's so
That was
many
fun.
rules.
It seems like